Good morning, Teach Better family. It is 7 a.m. here in Eastern Time Zone, which means it's 6 a.m. for Lillian. It is Wednesday. What is it? October 6th. I can't believe. But this is your daily drop, and we are live right now on Facebook, on Twitter, on Twitch, and on YouTube. I hope you are waking up, whether you're listening to us as you're getting ready or as you're in your car on the way to work already, as you're getting your coffee together, or if you're listening later on the Teach Better Talk podcast, we really appreciate that as well. If you are with us live, please drop in the comments, say hello, say good morning. I'd love to know, are you at home still? Are you already at work? Are you on your way to work? Are you not going to work today? Do you have coffee? Do you have tea? Do you have like a big plate of cinnamon rolls? What's going on? We'd love to see you in the comments there. We've got Lillian Ardell with us. I'm super excited about our conversation today and getting into things and sharing all the awesome things that you are doing and getting your thoughts on this week's theme of protecting our time and setting those boundaries and taking care of ourselves. So we're going to roll a commercial real quick. When we come back, we're going to get started with a nice morning cheers to get us going. We're going to learn a little bit about you, Lillian, then we're going to dive into stuff today. So stick with us. We'll be back in about 27 seconds. All right, welcome back to Daily Dropping. Good morning. And Lillian, I'm going to publicly apologize because we were on before we went live, and I'm like throwing all these things at you and talking really fast and everything. And you're like, "Hey, it's nice to meet you," and I just kind of like, "Oh yeah, great, right." So, but it is great to meet you, because we've never been on screen like this, and we haven't met in person.
That's right.
But I love what you do. I think the stuff that you guys get going on at Language Matters is great. So this is super excited. I know that Ray Heward is extremely jealous because I get to be on with you. However, I'm slightly jealous of Ray because Ray gets to spend today with Dave Schmittou and Alex, who's actually the first person to drop a comment in there because she's actually in Alex's district today, the Fighting Pretzel. So she's on her way there.
Cool.
He gets to join today because he's got an institute day. Normally, Alex is already in school and like rocking and rolling by this time or on his way. I don't know what he normally does. But Alex, it's awesome to see you. Glad you're able to join. Enjoy hanging out with Dave and Ray today. I am definitely jealous of them for that. But I get to hang out with you, which makes it the jealousy go down. I know that Ray's jealous right now. So anyway, so it's awesome to have you on the show. Awesome to be. I'm excited to talk to you about the theme and all that you do and how you weave those things together and get into that. Before we get going into anything, though, we need to do our morning cheers. So
that's right
up there. So if you're watching, please some good cheers. Are you drinking coffee or what is that?
Oh, very much. This is coffee.
Very much coffee. Okay. What does it say on there?
It says Illinois.
Oh, it says Illinois. Oh, okay. Illinois. Yeah.
S is silent. Illinois.
I know. I don't know why. I don't normally say Illinois. I think I read it versus saying it.
Yeah.
I learned that very quickly. Illinois. I don't know that I ever said it with the S, but I learned really quickly after meeting a few people.
Isn't that funny sometimes with our phonetic processing? Because I'm just going to go right into linguistics because I'm a language nerd. So sorry, not sorry, but like words like often, like you can tell when people are avid readers if they pronounce the T because it's a word that they've been reading a lot. And even maybe when they're reading it, they don't pronounce the T. Sometimes they'll just say it because it's so stuck in their visual, like spatial.
They see that T more than
the S, and so it just registered. And at that point, you pronounce.
Yeah, because I really don't think I ever say Illinois.
Wow. You don't hear it.
No, and normally I'm someone that'll correct because I know that people from Illinois don't like that S being said, and so I'll be like Illinois, and I'll be like, "There's no S there," and I'll just move on with my life. It's like when someone says "anyways," I just do like, "Hey, there's no S there," and then move on. Yeah. But like, yeah, that's interesting. It's an interesting way to think of it, so that we read it and stuff. But see, then, so like, I don't know that I can claim that as my excuse for most things because I don't read much.
Because you're not a big reader. I see.
I'm not a big reader, and people know that.
Well, but you are, because so much of our lives right now are consumed through media.
That's a really good point.
Now I mean, again, I'm in literacy, so I'm just going to go there, but like I'm looking at the screen, there's a lot of text. There, of course, is video. Now we even have subtitles. And like, if we're language learners, which that's my population, and I work with teachers that work with bilingual kiddos, just being able to put captions on a thing is there's like, we talk about, saturation of meaning and access and like access. And so having a lot of language and rich text around, especially while audio is playing, is something that's really helpful. Hey, Ray. Hey.
That's interesting. And I'm going to give you the blanket statement. You do not need to apologize at all for the rest of the time if you go language. You just go there. That's why you're here. I love how you've already brought that into just a little nuance that we're talking about. That's awesome. I'm excited for that to continue. So don't you dare apologize anymore. You just do it. You just go with it, and we are good.
Okay.
With that all being said, let's talk about you really quick, because there are some people I'm sure chiming in that do know you, and there's probably some people that don't know you, and I want to make sure people are aware of who you are. So can you give us the rundown of who you are, what you do, and tell us all about Language Matters and what you're doing over there?
You got it. So longtime teacher. I started in the Bronx in 2000s, and I worked as a bilingual educator, mostly second grade and fourth grade. And I just had a lot of always serving bilingual children. Spanish is my other language. And I really always wondered about the role of sort of structural grammatical components in teaching bilingual kiddos who are learning all this content in a new language. And it's a real challenge for them. It's a real challenge for the teachers. And I made my way into being a literacy coach with a focus on writing. And I, with all these questions I had, went to pursue a doctorate. For any that are interested, I did not get accepted my first round of applications. So, it's, you do the work and then you try again. And NYU accepted me, Steinhardt the second time. And I had a really beautiful and inspiring time while there for the next chapter of my life, doing research into teachers. And I started wondering about teachers' attitudes around language, because I think when you do work with teachers, and those of you listening, having ideas and beliefs about a thing really influences the way the choices you make in the classroom. So that's another thing I do, like with teacher language ideology. All of this to say that I wanted to build a business and a brand, which is where I am today in front of you, with focusing on helping teachers that work with bilingual kiddos, and also non-standard dialectal speakers. And by that, I mean kids that don't speak sort of the standard American dialect, to center language, it matters, in their literacy instruction. So that's where the brand comes from. And I am building out my network and have partnerships with UChicago and Cornell. And
And that's languagematters.org. How long
that's right.
How long has that been around? When did you start that brand up and
how you been building real fun and funny?
Yes.
March 30th of 2020. And you know what happened in our country.
Great time to launch a business. So how's that been? How's that been? I want to touch on something else you said too, but how's that been for you? I mean, it's, obviously it's been a year, 18 months or so, right? Mm-hmm. So do you feel like everything that happened in the shutdown and the focus and the shift to so much digital and virtual made it actually a good time to start because you were able to do, like, that's where everyone was? Or no, like for us, I know for us prior to the pandemic, 93% of our revenue came from in-person training. Yeah. So when the pandemic hit, that was like a massive adjustment and a hit to us. Right. And we were able to adjust, which is fantastic. But I also know a lot of people who started businesses right during the pandemic because they saw an opportunity. They were either out of work or in a different, more relaxed environment. They were able to start. Like, where did you fall into that? How did that work? And I understand everyone watching this has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but you have me on here. You should know I'm going to go I'm going to go to the business thing. So we're going to get to everything else. I promise. I'm just really curious.
Yeah. So the funny thing is that at this point in my life, try not to evaluate things as good or bad. I just try to see, okay, I know that I'm going to have to be nimble, and being in business, you have to be flex. And some people are going to find opportunities and pivot and grow. And because I was at the very beginning, I said to myself, Lil, have very modest goals and expectations as you go into this. I had a little bit of a runway, and I also have my scholarly pursuits. So I was like, lean into getting your dissertation work published in journals, and lean into that community, and just pray every day and surrender that you think that you know that you've invested in yourself and you're good at what you do. And over time, you will make the connections. And I just was like radically compassionate towards myself to just get it there. And look at me 18 months later on the Daily Drop. Like this is proof that
I love it.
Investing and being patient AF was what I needed.
Yes, amen to the patience AF. Yes, you have to.
That's our theme today. So
that's where most people struggle the most when it comes to business entrepreneurial stuff, is that they're not patient, and that's why they don't make it. So I want to touch real quick, and again, not necessarily connected to the theme of this week, but you kind of went past it of you mentioned that you didn't get accepted the first time you went for it. Like that is something that for a lot of people, for a good reason, like would just destroy them, deter them, and tell them, I'm clearly not good enough. This was so hard. I worked so hard and I got denied. I'm done. How did you take that? And then how did you kind of overcome that? Like, I can't, I mean, if you tell me there was no self-doubt, I don't know that I'll believe you. Like there had to be, that's a hit, right? I mean, you put a lot of work into that and trying to get in, and then you didn't get that. It was a goal you had. How did you overcome that? Was it, I mean, if it was easy for you, awesome. But like, what was your mind when you got the notification that, oh, I'm not in, now I got to figure out, I got to get back, I got to go after this again. And I don't know how long that process is, but how did that work in your mind? How did you overcome that and go right back after it?
Yeah. So I appreciate the ask. What helped is that one of the people in the program, she's like, well, we have this thing that's a postmaster's. So I have so many stinking degrees. I have like a bachelor's, I have 2 masters, and then I have the doctorate because I'm just obsessed with school. Right. So essentially it was a thing where they're like, we're not going to bring you into the funded thing, but if you want to sort of like do like payment on the side and do like side coursework and get additional credits that will ultimately go towards the doctorate, we can sort of onboard you into the NYU universe. So it was like a soft no, which probably helped my ego.
Okay.
I will also say that what it allowed me to do was build out coaching practice in my school for the interim 2 or 3 years between when I'd first applied. And also the truth of the matter is that I trusted that I wasn't ready to go into the program at that point, and that I still needed a little bit more professionalization and to do a little bit more work on the ground. And I gotta say, they restructured the program in the time in the funding structure. So I ended up getting far more funding when I applied the second time. There were more, like the faculty were a little bit more, I don't know. It was just, it ended up being a better time all told. And I have this, I mean, I don't know if there's any spiritual watchers out there, but just surrendering to like a plan that is beyond what our capacity, which was so not me in my 20s and like early 30s, was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get it. And also I think in education, we have a very like, which I think is resonant with the theme, go, go, go. You have to be like on to the next thing and showing that you're good at what you do. There's a lot of forces and pressure. Yeah. But the reality is that we're humans and we're limited in terms of what we can make happen. So I just was like, okay, I believe that it will. It's rare that you end up reapplying to the same program and getting it. I think oftentimes you're going to probably pitch to different ones. But I think developing a resilience practice, which is what I call this, has been one of the saving things in my life, in all areas of my life. And if you can find little pockets of gratitude, and I think also mentors and people that can help you. And I think the Teach Better universe is such a great space for those types of professionals that are out there that are looking to collaborate and support. I mean, Ray right now, it's a new friendship, but she's already like checking in with me and like helping me with my business side. And I know that she's paying it forward, because I imagine people in her life when she was at an early, perhaps maybe the same with you, Jeff. Does that any of that?
Absolutely. No, I love that. I'm sitting here going, we could probably stop now. I think we delivered a ton of value this morning. I am going to say hashtag patience AF, because it falls right in line with that again, right? To both what you said about how you don't see things as good or bad. They're just experiences and whatever. And then also the patience, like the patience to wait it out. And then it ended up being a better opportunity for you to get more funding. You did, other things along the way. So I love that. I'm glad I asked that, and I appreciate you sharing that. We are going to jump into our good news story, but first I want to say I mentioned a couple names, but Alex, great to see you. Lucas, awesome to see you. Nomini is here. Katie, Brianne, obviously Ray jumped in. Brad, Mr. Prickett, great to see you. So awesome to see you all. Keep jumping in the comments saying hello. If you're listening on the podcast later, you can come back to the comments if you want. Or you can also drop us a review and say hello there and tell us how awesome the episode with Lillian is, and we'll see you there. But we're going to jump into a good news story, talk about we got a couple holidays today that we're going to mention as well. So we will be back in just a few. All right, welcome back. Actually, Lillian ran away. Welcome back.
I just worked my lighting out for you. That's why
I needed to wait until you came back and be like, hey, welcome back. Welcome back to Daily Drop. And we are here. If you're not watching live, you didn't see that Lillian was out. Now I'm ruining everything by making a joke about it. But we're having fun this morning, and that's what one of the big purposes of this Daily Drop-In show is. We're live Monday through Friday every morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Time on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube, and then on the Teach Better Talk podcast a little bit later in the day. So good morning, Patricia. Good to see you here. Thanks for dropping in with us. This is into our good news segment. This is where we look for some sort of good news to share, and it's both to hopefully lift your day up, give you a little positivity, but also hopefully maybe encourage some conversation with your students, with your colleagues, with your friends, your family. So we're gonna get into that. I got a story that just made me smile this morning. So I'm gonna share that in a minute. But we also have a couple holidays today. So first off, it is World Cerebral Palsy Day, where we take just really heighten awareness around that disease and how we can help fight it. So that is going on today as well. So if you have a chance to look in and learn more about cerebral palsy and what that is and the challenges that those folks face and how we can help raise that awareness, that is a fantastic thing to do. There's also National Walk and Bike to School Day, which is an interesting one. My kids walk to school every day, so I think every day is that. So we didn't get to that. Do you have children at home?
Oh, she's in the crib singing to herself.
How old?
Walk to school today or every day also. So
how old is she?
Aya Rose is her name,
Aya
and
Rose.
she is 21 months tomorrow. She's 11.
Wow. My 7-year-old Jacqueline is Jacqueline Rose.
Oh,
great middle name. So we didn't realize how connected we were and how we're supposed to be friends too. So that's great. It's also National Noodle Day. I don't know what that means. I'm thinking that means we're supposed to eat noodles today. So if you have a chance, like some spaghetti or angel hair or some rigatoni or
carbs AF.
Yeah. Lots of carbs. We get the hidden vegetable ones. Do you know the hidden veggies?
Oh, where it's like
they're made with like I don't know. I like to think that they're made with vegetables, but there's a good chance they're just infusing fake vegetables in them. I don't really know. All I know is my son doesn't eat vegetables, but he loves spaghetti. Okay. So we trick him with that. And he's right over there, so hopefully he didn't hear me. He didn't look. It's cool. So anyway, so National Noodle Day. So celebrate that. That's exciting. It's interesting at the least. So looking at this good news story. So this comes from sunnyskies.com. Sunny Skies, and it's SKYZ.com. I don't even know where it's out of. But they have like a good news section. Mm-hmm. And this is a story came out yesterday, and it's a boy who's just turning 15 from Nottingham, England. His name is Daniel Harrison, and he is he's autistic, very far on the spectrum, and he had shared with his parents that the only thing he wanted, two things for his birthday. He wanted to learn how to drive, and he wanted to make new friends. He's not going to be able to drive. So they said, well, we can't do that. And his parents were surprised by the fact that he had this concept of what friends were and that we want people in our life. And like, they were moved by it. So his dad pushed it out on Twitter saying like, cause Daniel wrote it down on like, I think it looks like maybe it was for a school project. Mm-hmm. And so Kevin, who's his father, posted it on Twitter and it blew up and went viral. And what was really cool is a whole bunch of people, hundreds of thousands of people reached out and sent in tweets and pictures of them wishing Daniel happy birthday, including folks like Russell Crowe, Mark Hamill, and a whole bunch of celebrities. It's just a really cool thing of like we hear so much of the negatives of the internet and social media and all this stuff. But when I see a story like this, I'm like, man, there's a lot of power that we do a lot of good with that too, right? We all have this ability to connect from all over the world and brighten, even if it's only brighten one kid's day. Like, how fun is that? And the thing is, like, I guarantee you there are thousands and thousands of people going through this feed and seeing all these images, even though it's not their son or their birthday or anybody tweeting at them. They're smiling. Like, I was just smiling going through the thread of all these different pictures and just people making cards for them and doing videos for them. I'm like, this is like, we need more of this just loving each other, being kind to each other, seeing an opportunity to make a young boy smile and stuff. So I was super I just love that. This just made me smile. So I hope it makes you smile today. I think, and Lillian, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And like my thought is, like, you can bring this to the kids. I plan on sharing with my kids here of like, this is how we can use social media and these types of technology and tools for good, to help people, to make them smile, to raise their day, and knowing that, hey, the simplest little gestures of just saying happy birthday and hey, we can be friends can just completely change someone's world. So anyway, there's our good news story.
For me, it's about the power of the ask, right? He asked for it. He wanted something. And I think for kids that are on the spectrum, to advocate for themselves is so beautiful. I mean, for anybody that advocates for themselves is beautiful. And that's one of the themes I wanted to touch on today for teachers specifically, is to ask for things and ask for what you know that you need and probably think you deserve in the way of space and balance and time. I'm such an advocate for advocacy. There we go. There's a little wordplay there. But and I also think that it's language that brings us together. I mean, I'll always find a way to bring anything back to language because
love it. Don't you apologize. We already said you're not allowed to.
No. I'm going to say that it's our means of obviously communicating. But it's also something that we all share and we all understand. And I think for kids on the spectrum, language can be a real challenge or feel like it's an inaccessibility. So the fact that he sort of wrote it or asked for it, and props to the teacher also for, like, if that was coming, like, let's recognize that probably came from a teacher supporting that child, and probably the parents as well. So
that's and for him to, like I said, advocate for himself and then get a positive response from that advocacy for himself, hopefully then encourages him to do that more and to advocate more and stuff. And super cool story. And I love that you always bring about the language. That's fantastic. So, you mentioned the theme, the idea of this week, which is all about protecting your time and really setting boundaries and taking care of yourself, kind of all in that realm. Then I know you're excited about this and how you're going to twist it all into language and all kinds of cool stuff for us. So we're going to jump into that now. We're going to get into our brainstorm bank here. So we will be back with Lillian in just a few seconds. All right, we are back with our daily drop-in where we're live Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern time every day, streaming on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. I've got Lillian Ardell here, Dr. Lillian Ardell here.
Doctor.
Language Matters, languagematters.org. And we're getting in, so we're talking about a brainstorm bank. If you go to teachbetter.com/brainstorm-bank, you can drop questions into the form there. It's a simple little form. We can drop questions that you might have, topics you think we should touch on. You can even drop in like guests or cool holidays that maybe we haven't thought about, whatever you want into there, and we'll get to those. You can obviously, if you are live with us right now, you can drop in the comments and comment on what we're talking about, ask questions, whatever it might be. Kelly's in the house from Education Blueprint. Good to see you, Kelly. Also, Dr. Kelly. So great to see you there, Kelly. And Lillian, excited to talk to you about this and get into this. So we've talked a lot this week about how do we protect the time? How do we set boundaries for ourselves? On Monday, Ray and I got into a lot of the idea of, like, teacher guilt playing such a rough part of that, because teachers feel guilty when we advocate, when they advocate for themselves and when they set boundaries and when they can't do everything for everyone all the time because they have to, sleep. And I think we got to a really cool place there of, like, trying to get past that, but it's not that easy. So I'd love to hear your thoughts when I talk about, and I know you were ready for this. So I think you already, queued up, but like, so take this wherever you take it. But your mind, when we said, hey, we want you to come on a show and this is what we're talking about, what were some of the first thoughts that you went through? Like, ooh, I really want to share, or ooh, that means this to me, or that's just what triggered in your head?
Yeah, thank you. So I love that this is the topic and that y'all are creating a space for teachers to potentially reflect and also know that they deserve to have a better work-life balance. I think that you get on that hamster wheel of this profession, and then there's a lot of posturing from maybe colleagues or maybe from administrators that you shouldn't have access to balance in your life. And I think maybe we're trying to disrupt that, especially we're still in the pandemic, but like all of that sort of got blown up. And let's also recognize that a lot of teachers are parents also. And so there's a lot of parallel guilt happening for parents that are doing a lot of things. So there's this like exponential effect of I'm guilty as a parent and I'm guilty as a teacher. And I hate that for the profession. I just want to say I will judge that, and I don't like that that's the phenomena. So I'll weigh in on that one. But you did ask in my capacity as a linguist. So I'm an applied linguist. That's how I understand the work that I do. I focus on language. I focus on the role of language in pedagogy. But I also observe in the world and as a human how language plays a role. And something that I know you all understand, but maybe haven't thought about, is that our language is our thoughts, right? So our cognitive development develops alongside our linguistic development. And the more sophisticated our languaging can be, so as our thinking. So that's just a statement. Hats off to Vygotsky, who does the zone of proximal development. Vygotsky also helped us understand the relationship of language and thought. And I mention that because let's see, when I am monitoring my own inner criticisms, right? And that's sort of where I'm trying to go right now, is what is the voice that we're hearing, and what is the tone or the tenor of that voice? I mentioned earlier that I was like radically kind and compassionate to myself. So if I could put a script down of what those thoughts sounded like, it was, it's okay, Lil. There's a pandemic right now. We don't know what's going on. You're starting a business. You're not going to be getting like contracts signed right now. And that's okay. And so what I noticed about what my thinking was at that point, it was absent of something. And that's the thing that I want to talk about. And I'm going to get real nerdy right now. So like buckle up, because they're about to get a linguistic lesson.
We're ready to go. Let's do it. Let's get nerdy.
So there's this part of our language system called modal verbs. MODAL verbs. Okay. Do you think, Jeff, you know which those are?
I don't have a clue. I haven't understood half of what you're saying. So it's
right.
No, I'm joking. Yes, I don't know what those are. No, I'm interested now though.
So people might be searching what the F is a modal verb.
I'm not Googling. You're my Google right now.
Modal verbs are the coulds, the shoulds, the have tos, the need tos. They express our sense of obligation and also our evaluation. Like they're functional in the language, right? Like, and excuse me, as parents, we like lean on modals a lot. Like you have to go to the bathroom right now before we leave. I mean, like they work in the disciplinary sense. So we're throwing modals around left and right in our outer speech, but also in our inner speech. And so if Lily was less compassionate during that time at the onset of my business development, so what would that script have sound like? You have to get those contracts signed. You only have 4 months before you jump, like setting all of these rules, and it all expresses itself at the level of these modals, and they're deeply evaluative. So I guess the space that I think about with language and self-compassion is that you need to be really careful for listening to the use of the shoulds, the have tos, the level of urgency and sort of drill sergeant force that might be going on in your head. And just at the beginning, my advice is to pay attention if they're there, not to do anything about it necessarily, but is that the way that I speak to myself? And this might sound a little cognitive therapy-ish. I actually don't know, because I haven't done that level of it, but it's just a mindfulness practice for what's the quality of the way that I talk to myself. Is it usually it's evaluative? Is it neutral? Is it kind? And my guess, I don't have access to every teacher's inner thinking, but my guess is that there is this very like, put yourself down, compare yourself to others. I bet that teacher isn't, like thinking about self-care. Look at how much they're doing. And so you build up this narrative of it must be that other people are doing more than me, which is also not true oftentimes.
Which leads to the I need to, I have to, I should be. Yeah.
Or they work in tandem. I need to do this because that person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So if you put it in the different part of the sentence, like both sort of play out. But the truth is that those are realities that we build for ourselves, and it means we can deconstruct them. I think like there's always a pathway out. And my offering is that you pay attention. You want to talk about a resource, you journal about it, you touch base with your best teacher friend. Do you do this modal verb thing that Lillian was talking about? Like, do you sort of, is that how it works for you? And how does that, don't you feel like garbage when you, and so like, and then maybe for another week, you like are really focused on just catching it and then reframing it. So instead of, I have to, what am I already doing? Like, I actually already am doing so much, or I asked for that thing and I didn't get it and that made me feel crummy. I'm going to go back and sort of advocate for it again. So there's a lot of like, recognize the thing, but then make sort of an adjustment. And yeah.
And you mentioned journaling in there, and that was, I'm glad you did, because I was going to ask, like, when you were going through this process of first just catching them and thinking about them, my mind was going, yeah, and possible next step is, if I'm just dumping my thoughts onto a piece of paper, can I then go back and see how many times did I write could, would, have to, need to, and did I write that second half right? Did I write you need to because, and then I can find what is that root thing causing me to have the motor verbs that are hurting me or hindering me, and then how could I write this differently? So then I can practice. Okay, now I know how I could do this differently. How do I start saying that? And then I think you got there like a week, or it probably takes a lot longer than a week.
Yeah.
So to really focus on, okay, now that I've been very well aware of this, I need to really focus on speaking kindly to myself and being compassionate AF with myself, and doing that. Do you journal a lot? Is that something that you do to get thoughts out? Is that like, how did you, I guess for me, like when you started your business and you were super passionate and you were thinking of this, was it because you had done this practice and you were aware of like, hey, there's a really good chance I'm going to do this? Or did you start to notice trouble and then caught yourself and started adjusting, and now you realize, oh, you know what, that really helped, that I look like, I'm just trying to figure out like how you got there and how you caught yourself. And this is me assuming that you weren't always 100% compassionate with yourself. I could be wrong, but
no.
How did you get to that? Was it through your studies, or was it through the experience of the business, or something else?
Yeah, no, it was through meditation, which is a very common pathway for being able to bring a mindfulness practice, but also to notice the quality of your thoughts. You have to sort of settle the whole body down, and in a pure twist of luck, because luck plays such a role in the way that our lives go. I began a robust meditation practice when the shutdown, at least in New York, because that's where I lived up until a year ago, was happening. And so because I was doing this attempt to be quiet in the body and in the mind, I was able to notice my thoughts and also pay attention to like the quality of my thoughts. And I just have to break for a moment and say that teachers might be listening thinking, who you think you are that I've got even 5 minutes to be quiet in my life right now? Like, my life is so insane, but truly be late for 5 minutes. Like, take 5 minutes in your stinking car, sit down, give yourself a moment to transition before you go inside. You know that the day, like, and even if your mind is spinning out in those 5 minutes, you have granted yourself an opportunity, like a fighting chance, to pay attention to something and just recognize, oh, there's a lot there. So I think meditation, I'm such a fierce advocate of meditating and carving out quiet space as a parent, as a teacher, as a professional, like sort of all the things. And what we know about the brain research is that meditation helps our nervous system. Like, I can talk on the sort of like physiological technical side. I think it releases dopamine. It brings our body sort of to a more calming space. Yeah. And I think journaling also is a form of meditation. Walking can be a form of meditation. If people do get exercise, I'm sure that those teachers are by and large one for one happier or just better adjusted because they carve out that space for themselves and they probably are able to work through. So if somebody's out on a long run and they're paying attention to the quality of what their thoughts are during that time. There's a lot of access ways to get there, but I also think a venting, dumping conversation with a buddy can be another opportunity to just like pay attention, even reviewing texts that you have with your friend, because we're all sort of in that space. It's just looking for it. And that's why I'm so obsessed with the work that I do and looking at language, because I think that anybody can participate in that practice because we all use language and we all know things about it and have ideas about it. And I'm such a cheerleader for language, like for promoting awareness around language and paying attention to it, being intentional with it. You would think that I journal. I don't as much, but I do blog a lot. So.
Which for a lot of people is that form. Is that so? What is your? Well, first off, I just want to note, I love how you bring language into all this, because so often when we think language, we think of things like how to speak, how to write, and learn new languages and stuff like that. But I love your connection to how it's the language in here that can play such a. We've talked about it in a few different roles, and into right into this theme of like how we, in the words we use inside, into ourselves, is so important. So I love that twist. When you talk about meditation, what is your go-to? You mentioned a whole bunch of different ways in which we can meditate or some form of that. What is your go-to when you're like, hey, I need to take some time. I need to get into meditation. What is your go-to? Is it? It's not, you said not journaling. Is it the walk-in, or is it like?
No, I do the sit.
You sit down. Okay. And
I'm serious about it. And I will say that so a lot of things have happened a lot of inciting events that I'm not going to get into, but I had a lot of unexpected changes happen in my life, sort of coinciding and predating the pandemic. I mean, we all did. And so I had a very spotty meditation practice previously, but it was this thing that I knew that start doing this thing, Lil, and things are going to feel, and you're going to exist in the world in a better way when you start it. So I look at my meditation, for me, the way that an alcoholic looks at drinking, which is you can't not do it. Like you can't get through the day without it. So make it just essentially prioritize it, but then be disciplined, right? Like we find discipline in our ways in a lot of different lives. I create like a no excuses space around doing the meditation. And I mean, I could spend an entire other daily drop talking about the myriad ways that having this space has changed my relationship to myself, my relationship to other people in my life. I am a lot more kind. I'm a lot more forgiving and understanding. I think about success in very different ways. Like, and it's crazy to me because it all exists at the level of language still. Like it's all about, I can, and I'm like, talk about manifesting. My business is going to it's going to get there at some point, and I will forge relationships. But again, I think meditation also breeds patience. Like this is a thing that is really hard to sort of capture. And I guess also, I've also always believed in myself. I guess I have a high level of self-confidence, which is great. I just sort of came into the world that way. I want for everybody to be confident in the things that they're doing and to invest in themselves. And I think when you are confident, you can advocate for yourself. You feel like you have value and you matter. And I think that language can be an access point to maybe develop some of that. At least that's my hope. And the branding, like sort of the message that I have for the teachers that I work with is I want you to feel confident, but also competent in the work you do with literacy with emergent bilingual kiddos. So I want teachers to feel confident and competent in bringing a self check, a life balance practice into their life, however they see fit to do it, because it's going to show up differently for every person. But I think it's achievable. You just have to want it for yourself.
I love you mentioned like we set up those no excuses, I'm going to get it done situations for so many aspects of our life, but then for the ones that to take care of us, so often we don't. I'm curious if you can, and we're gonna get like our next segment to wrap up the day is looking at like some resources and stuff that we can look at. But I'm curious around the meditations got me very interested. And I love the fact that you said that you were so disciplined with it. Can you, and I understand if you can't, because I also know the meditation is very personal. So if you don't want to show, I wonder, can you give us sort of the bullet points of like your process for how you go into that meditation and that meditative stage?
So, I love that we're talking about this. I will talk all the time.
And we may have to do a whole other session where just like meditate or something, but like we'll do the short version right now.
So I did transcendental meditation, and what I liked about it is that they give you a mantra. So I needed something to sort of like get a hook to start to like rhythmically get into. I'll also put rain sounds on in the background. Like I'll use like an audio sort of resource.
And what do you use for that audio resource? We're gonna give them a resource right now.
Oh,
I use Headspace for the noise.
So the interesting for me is that I found that Headspace, I got caught up in getting the levels of the days not stopped, and that's an adjustment practice that really didn't work for me.
So I just there's one thing, the 60-minute thing that I don't know if I've looked at hardly anything else in the app, but like I found that it was one of those things that I was like, that doesn't work for me, and I thought like, when I play that in front of my desk and like lay down, and now it's sort of like it's like this trigger, like almost like ringing a bell when you're hypnotized. Like when I hear that, I'm like, oh, that's like my sleep time. It's been really good for me sleep wise. So anyway, where do you get like your rain sounds? Like this is sounding weird, but like
the Alexa.
I've looked at so many of like those apps and stuff, and I'm like, I can't find sounds that I like, which is weird. But like, so anyway,
I would say that like principally it's the mantra because I can do it. I can sort of do it anywhere. Nice. And then it's usually 20 minutes. And I have to make sure that people know I'm like not good at this thing. Like a lot of people, they're like, oh, I tried it. And I was like, the thing is about just doing it. Like that's where you start to not evaluate is like, I could have been hamster wheel the entire 20 minutes, but like the thing that your brain it's a workout, right? It's giving your brain opportunities to go back to the silence, such that out there in the day and during the world, you can start to spin out around a thing. And you're like, oh, isn't that delightful, Lily? You're spinning out about this thing. Like bring it back to ask yourself, is it true? Do you have evidence that that's true? Or do you have energy that's not going anywhere? And I think something that I spend a lot of time in my days right now, like you're feeling a lot of things and it's like channeling towards this object really in the most like the lizard brain way that we sort of are. I'm not a physiologist. Like these are just things that I've learned over the course of consuming, but it's incredible to me how the modern condition, right, builds this way of us wanting and needing and striving and going, and that there are other planes of existence and ways of being in the world that are nicer in our inner world, and also like creating what I think is kinder energy out into the world. And so I think teachers, we all have a form of PTSD of just being in the profession, and then lob the pandemic on it, and it's like blow that up so that like we can barely even survive. And I have such deep commitment and compassion to the daily work of teaching, which is why I'm so grateful that Teach Better exists in all of these platforms, because we are the frontline workers always, and we always have been. And then a bunch of standards got dropped on us with No Child Left Behind, and then got like tripled down with the Common Core, so like it hasn't always been this way, which is another thing. Like for newer teachers coming into the profession, like previous generations of teachers and like the way it was done was not that way. It was a really kind profession. It was a really lovely one that had a ton of creativity and camaraderie. And I just, I don't know. I like when I work with teachers, I'd like them to understand that there's like a historical context in which we're doing this work. And it hasn't always been such a pressure cooker, and it needn't be that way any longer. It's just really, really difficult to get out of a status quo way of doing things. Yeah. And I also I know that some people are going to be listening to me and thinking, she doesn't know anything. My life is really, really hard, and there is no possible way. And to that listener, I would say, if you're being so defensive around the thing, there's probably a lot there that would warrant sitting down, asking some questions around, and asking, does it have to be this way? And is it really working for you? Like, it's okay to ask yourself some of those questions, because your administrator is probably not, and your superintendent probably isn't. Not to shame those people, because they are in so many levels of pressure also. And I have immense sympathy for the pipeline of pressure, right? And that's hashtag pipeline of pressure. Like, how all of the things just come down from people, probably policy writers and officials, that have no sense of what's actually going on the ground and the effects of these decisions that they're making.
Yeah, I love that, the pipeline of pressure. And to your point of it's okay to ask yourself that question, because you don't have to go share it with the world. You're just asking yourself, right? I want to highlight or touch on one of the points you made about the meditation piece, which is you said, I want everyone to know I'm not good at this. But it was really crazy, because you said it, and my mind was just going, because you said, you were talking through how that's the first opportunity you now have to be compassionate and to change the way you speak to yourself. Because you could, and I did this when I do morning pages. I don't do them consistently, but I do them when I feel like I need them, which is where, kind of like journaling, but it's a brain dump that you never read.
There you go.
So like I try to, when I need it, I try to get 3 pages, and it's literally just complete nonsense, but it's anything and everything in my head. So it's not quite journal. It's a little different, but the first, gosh, I don't know, a long while I did it, and I actually stopped for a while because I was judging myself on how I was doing it. And I'm like, I'm scribbling so much, no one could ever read this and judge it anyway. Like, but I'm not. And so like, when you talk about meditation, I'm the same way, where I'm like, oh, I'm not doing this right. And to your point, what I'm going to try to remember is like, well, that's not the point. The point is that you realize that you needed it. You found the 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, and you did it. And if you relaxed this much or spoke this much nicer to yourself, you did better than you would have without it. And that's the process of it. And so I loved how you touched on that, like the idea of just like being okay with not being a great meditator, which I don't know, is there a standard for that? I don't know. Like, is the first step of.
Well, I think it's a shift in the framing. That's never the point. And so recognizing that, and it goes back to our modals, Jeff, like that I should be, or that others are and I'm not, is the way that we've evolved to be social beings and like in a community. And it has some functions, but in the way that we use it to knock ourselves down, it's pretty problematic. So any media, and I love the Brene Brown series and all of her work on vulnerability. I would say, in terms of a resource, like, I worship at the Church of Brene Brown. Anytime she brings people on, she's talking about radical compassion. She's talking about being your full self and being your broken, flawed. She talks about being awkward and being brave. And I found, and her content dropped also at the start of the pandemic. I don't know. I think that was just happenstance. And so meditating, listening to that podcast, and just like seeing all of this carnage happening around, you couldn't help but hold the big questions of life in your hands. And I also had a newborn baby at the time, so I was just like extra about humanity. And teachers are in the most humane, humanity-driven profession. Excuse me. Like, why do we not deserve, or why do you not deserve to have compassions and niceness given to you? You do. And like, I certainly hope I'm not the first or last person that you'll hear today say that. I just think that the system creates like a vortex where you think that you don't deserve that. And I'll just throw punches at the system left and right, and like try to chip away at it, so that ultimately it's going to be teachers and actors and people that try to rise up and do something about it. So if I can be one more sort of notch in dismantling it in that way, good.
I love it. I am loving this conversation. So I'm so happy that I was the one who got up early today and did this. You've already mentioned a bunch of resources, but we're going to flip into our last segment of the day, which is to talk through some resources. So we're going to touch on that, and then we'll wish everyone a good day, and we'll go from there. So we'll be back in a couple seconds here. All right, we are back and almost wrapping up our daily drop-in for Wednesday, October. I have to look at my watch, 6th. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. This is Daily Drop-In, where we're live Monday through Friday, or you might be listening on Teach Better Talk podcast as well. I've got Dr. Lillian Ardell here, and I have just been like at school today. I am just sitting here. I'm absorbing everything. I've taken a bunch of notes. I'm thinking to myself, ooh, I'm going to go back and listen to that again. I need to start doing that. What's that?
I was going to ask if you had any more questions, but you've got a thing to do, so I'm not going to.
I've got lots of questions that we don't have time for. We may have to have a virtual cup of coffee or drink or something. Or I might lay down on a couch for it and do like a shrink thing. Because I don't know if that's something you do, but you might want to consider it as like another service.
Another venture.
Yeah. But this has been awesome. I really enjoyed it. We've mentioned several little things. I mean, you mentioned Brene Brown and her podcast and all of her books. So that's a great recommendation, great resource. I want to mention, obviously, we've talked about it, but languagematters.org, which is your site. Lots of resources there, lots of information there. So that's something that we definitely love and want to push to. Where are some of the places that you go to get, whether it's to get things about related to meditation and self-care, whether it's just the awesome places you go to find our thoughts on language and how we use that, or books you love to go read, podcasts you look toward. Where do you go for all the things that you need? What are some recommendations we can give to our audience today?
So I'm gonna do a throwback one, and it's one that I revisit often. He's a fellow Illinoisian, so you do use the S when you refer to that. And he's no longer with us, but he was a contemporary author. His name is David Foster Wallace. Maybe you're familiar with him.
I've heard the name, yeah.
Yeah, he suffered from depression, and ultimately he took his own life, which is a very sad part of the story. However, there is this graduation speech from 2005 that is called "This Is Water," and he was like a theologian. He was just a really great mind and a beautiful auteur. And this speech touches, it's really a treatise on self-compassion. And there's a lot of nuggets of wisdom woven through this 23-minute sort of audio. It also comes in a book. And This Is Water, I find myself going back to because there's so many mantras or sort of ways of conceptualizing that I have tugged at and pulled into, like vulnerability. There is a greater human experience that we have that we can try and access in the other person, even a person that we think their beliefs turn them into less than human, which I think is a big problem in society. Mm-hmm. Whatever, it always has been in warring, like competing people. If I can see you as less than, then I can kill you or hate you or be mean to you. But I'm surprised to find that I'm coming back to Foster Wallace because I think his writing is beautiful. But I found that this speech in particular, I continue to return to because it's such a treatise on humanity and on kindness. And maybe even sometimes in my meditations, I try to conjure some of those insights. And I would put This Is Water, the Brene Brown podcast, anything on vulnerability or breaking down some of your walls and interrogating them, which requires some time and some quiet. And those two things feel sometimes completely out of reach for a teacher who's a parent, who's at this, who's trying to get that and has homework. And oftentimes they're in grad school. Like, I get that lives are completely full, but I would argue that until you start investing in yourself, your lived experience is going to feel harder, like pound for pound, minute for minute, as you go through the world, the longer that you put off some of this work, I guess. And I hope I'm not speaking from a place of privilege. Oh, privileged people get time and space to relax. Like, maybe that is true. And if it's so, I hate that. But I don't know. I think also spirituality, going to church or having a religious practice is so part and parcel of this work. So maybe leaning into that, reading Psalms or doing, Bible work or any sort of spiritual prayers are mantras. They also have the same effect on your nervous system, I think. And we as a society have, over the course of all of our lives, built that into the fabric of what we do, right? There's a real purpose for that. But ultimately, it's being kind to ourselves and our inner thoughts and watching for those modals, I think, is like, that would be Yeah.
Those darn modal verbs. Those things are. Oh man, I love it. All right, so to wrap up, I want to make sure everyone knows how to connect with you and get more time with you and connection with you. So we mentioned languagematters.org. Where are the other best ways people connect with you? Are you on Twitter, Instagram? Where do you go? Where do you spend a lot of your time?
Sure. So I'm mostly on Insta and on Twitter. Twitter, I'm at Lillian Ardell. So right there. On Insta, Ray yelled at me that I'm not consistent with my tags, so I'll get that sorted out as my business develops. But on Insta, I am at Language Matters, right?
Okay.
So that's an easy one to find. Less so on the Facebook, but I'm working on that. So I would say those are the two. And then you can contact me through the website. I've got a bunch of free language resources. We haven't even really spoken about the work that I do with teachers of language learners, but that's like
which we have a couple minutes. Give us that. Take a few minutes now, because we went so many other places. This was an awesome episode, but we didn't really. And like I literally like I made a note to myself like toward the end, got to make sure she like shares about Language Matters. So give us a couple minutes of all the different types of resources and things that they can get from that website for us.
So
that'll be our final resource.
Cool. There we go. So I call it the language of language teaching, right? The language of language teaching. So what are the fundamental concepts and theories that we recruit when we're working with bilingual kiddos? Some of that is doing linguistic bridging, like linguistic scaffolding. I work a lot in the translanguaging space, which might be a new big term that people might not have heard about, but the idea that you want to recruit a child's home language in all of the ways that they can to do the work of schooling, right? I have these beautiful, I work with a graphics designer finally, and so I have these beautiful little tiles and one-pagers that you can all download for free. And then the goal would be, right, for me, is to use some of these resources and say, Lillian, come work with us in our school. We have a ton of, you might call them English language learners, ESL students, multilingual learners. They get labeled a lot in different ways, but bring some of those ideas and those ways that we think about language work in the classroom. And again, like I said, I want to be doing like very close reading exercises, looking at how language builds meaning, and then building inferential and critical thinking skills in the literacy space, which, as it happens, is good for your mainstream monolingual kiddos, in addition for your bilingual children that are learning all of their work in their new language. And just a fierce advocate for being critical in the literacy and language space, bringing in representative texts. I know that like culturally responsive pedagogy is trendy, but it's good that it's trendy because we want to have far more diverse stories and perspectives. The teaching core trends to be Anglo and female, like in large numbers. And if we haven't had those background and experiences of being, I have learned another language and been in other countries, so I know what it's like to struggle and to feel confused. But I think that I can work with teachers to find ways that they can access their languaging practices, which again, confident and competent, because teachers aren't really helped in their training to be text analysts. A lot of times the curriculum sort of does that piece for you, but then it leaves you in front of children being like, I don't know how to identify why this is the noun and why that matters, and doing like a text analysis of this close passage. And then teachers can their affect starts to rise. They start to get mean in their head about the things, I can't do this, I have no right to do this. And then they shut down, and then they get mad at somebody like me for even suggesting that they would be able to do an analysis at that level. So like, I'm a linguistics cheerleader, but I want everybody to be that, because I think that that's how we do really good work with literacy. And those test scores will start rising and rising, because the kids are just going to be like, I can like decompose this text and say something interesting about it. And you know what? I can write a really interesting one too, because now I have the tools and a voice to go tell my story, which I'm really interested in also.
We could do a whole other episode on just that. And we're probably going to have you back for that. Maybe just a dancing episode too. That could be a thing as well. Lillian, thank you so much for coming on today. This was really an awesome episode. Super excited that I got to be here. We are going to do one final cheers.
Okay. I have like one sip left.
Yeah, I'm down to, I might have two. I'll take a gulp instead of a sip. But here we are. Cheers to you. Hopefully you are getting off onto your day, and that you took something away from whether you're watching, listening, or listening later to this. Make sure you connect with Lillian and check out languagematters.org and connect with her and chat with us. And we'll see you back here tomorrow morning for another daily drop-in. We appreciate you. Have an amazing Wednesday, and you're awesome. Thanks.
Yay. Bye.